We are bringing facts back into fashion, and we are making sanity sexy again. And remember, we're not crazy. You are. No chance to check it out now. The maiden voyage, the shakedown cruise of Radically Rational. We'll tell you what it's all about, but first of all, some brief introductions. I am the never fashionable, but sometimes stylish Paul Alexander, and this is my friend and broadcast partner and content genius, Lori Pearson, and that says it all, because who on this planet or any other would not want to be Lori Pearson?
All kinds of people. And we got to go back because I've got to compliment your shirt.
You like this?
You said you aren't fashionable, but how can you beat Herb Alpert and Lonnie Hall?
Yeah, two excellent musicians and such a wonderful story over the years. So thanks for mentioning that. Yes. And Lori, I want to thank you while we're in the business of thanking people, because it was so great of you to come up with the concept for this show. Because if it flops, it means that I have plausible deniability. So I want to thank you for that.
I don't know if I came up with the idea so much as we've had so many conversations about me being so sick and tired of everybody arguing all the time and never getting to a point that you said, aha.
So would you describe us as peacemakers? Is that
that's a bit of a stretch?
Or are
that
we,
sounds so nice.
Are we muckrakers?
Both.
A little bit of both.
We'll switch back and forth between those roles, probably between each other at any given moment.
Well, you got that right. Okay, so true confession time. Lori and I both have extensive American media backgrounds. Yeah. That said, to date, neither one of us has actually been incarcerated for that. So we're hoping that we know of, right? I don't know everything about you, Lori. Right? All right. So what this is about is we find ourselves in a post-fact world, and frankly, we don't like it. And whatever we can do to help that a little bit or fix it is something that we want to do, because the national conversation, Lori, is just not going well.
No. Everybody's arguing, and everybody's arguing and holding fast to their perception of their facts. I say their facts because they've taken their own filter, their own personal perspective, and they take what they think are facts, and then they argue about them with other people whose facts are the exact opposite about the exact same thing. And so where do you go? And that's why I stopped watching news and sort of took myself out of politics, because it's too frustrating to find the middle ground to get any kind of understanding on either side. And all we do is argue and hate each other. That's got to stop. It's
probably not proper at this point in February to tell somebody Happy New Year. But here we are in 2020, and it feels like 420 BC.
Right?
We've got all this technology and less wisdom and more superstition than ever before.
True. And more communication and more availability of resources to communicate and to research and to get information. So we really have no excuse to not suss out the truth and discuss the facts like sane, rational human beings.
So we're going to get into this whole issue of what is and what is not a fact, and what is and is not the truth.
Defined is what we're going to say.
Well, if you want to go there, we can. Absolutely. But what has happened is that a lot of people have granted themselves the license and the right to decide what is a fact. And this is what I'm seeing happen. To a lot of people right now, a fact is anything they want to hear, and fiction is anything that makes them remotely uncomfortable.
Right.
So we're talking past each other.
Right.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
And they're arguing again about, I believe this, you believe that. It's not even beliefs. These are facts. It's nothing I believe. This happens to be the truth. And we could pull any example out of current news that you want to make this point. But yes, continue. Sorry, cut you off.
Well, believe it or not, we are going to try to be proactive about this, and we are going to make some prescriptions because we truly want to not just gripe about the situation, but hopefully help it a little bit. Right. But before we can do that, we got to kind of discuss how we got here in the first place. And Lori, my feeling is this. For the most part, prior to now in American history, different people could interpret facts differently, and they could arrive at different conclusions based on those facts, but we were all at least drinking out of the same pool of facts. Okay, that thing has completely just left the rails here. We have people talking about alternative facts. We have people defining their own facts. We even have people saying there's no such thing as facts.
Would you call that pool of facts information like the Walter Cronkite years of things? Are you talking about media? Are you talking about access of information or to information?
All of the above, and science. I mean, when you look at
Science.
when you think about this,
Easy now.
if you look at something that has really distinguished America's place in human history, it has been a commitment to
yes.
facts, including scientific facts. Now we have everybody describing themselves as an authority because they've encountered something they want to believe. So I'm just going to give it to you straight. If you want your medical and scientific information from Jenny McCarthy, you're not going to get it here. And as for Kellyanne Conway and her alternative facts, the best thing you can do with her is rent her for your kid's 4th birthday party and have everybody play Pin the Tail on Kellyanne.
Oh, I thought you were going to suggest taking a ride or something. I'm glad you said pin the tail.
Exactly.
Okay, go back with the Jenny McCarthy thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can do plenty of research on the, Dr. Google and find Dr. Google will support Jenny McCarthy's take on, I hate to pick on Jenny, but since you brought her up,
Right.
On her take on vaccinations and autism, for example. You can find a lot of science on that. And so then you have the crew who get behind her and say, this aligns with my viewpoint. So, and there's science behind it. And so they stand toe-to-toe with someone who says, that's BS. There's no science behind that. There's science to the exact opposite of that. You're crazy. And this one says, no, you're uninformed, right? So how do we get happiness out of that?
I get that, but I would say that with respect to this particular example and this particular subject, it's not like there's some kind of balance and there's not like there's some kind of real split opinion regarding this. So we have granted ourselves, in many cases, an unwarranted license to consider ourselves authority, and I think we have placed authority, in many cases, in the wrong people.
So
now, again, we have media backgrounds.
Right.
Okay. My feeling would be this.
Research.
Facts require no balance. Facts are balance.
But if you're looking at facts and finding 2 different facts on the web, and you can find a whole tribe of people who say, no, those facts are the right facts. Those other facts are the wrong facts.
Absolutely.
Whose responsibility is it to suss out what the actual bottom line is so that we can have some discussion about it?
I'm going to say this. Ultimately, it is the individual's responsibility, but that requires some education. So one of the things we're going to talk about is identifying news sources that are more reliable than others and less reliable than others. So we mentioned the fact that we've got media background. So what you're probably thinking is that we're going to spend a lot of time passionately defending the media. And you'd be dead wrong because the American media has committed egregious violations, and a lot of the responsibility for the fact that a huge percentage of the American population does not trust the media, a lot of that fault lies with the media. Some of it was done unwittingly, and other things were done quite intentionally and very cynically.
Right. And that's where you get the distrust. And so how do you know what information to trust?
Again, that's an educational process. There are things you can do to, as you said, suss out more or less reliable sources. So one of the things we want to do in this first edition of Radically Rational, we're going to talk about this fake news thing. It's a dominating conversation. It's particularly important now as we head into an election year. We're going to tell you that fake news exists, but not in the way you may think that it does, and there's plenty of blame to go around.
Well, it's an easy shutdown anytime you disagree with someone's political perspective or anything else. That's fake news.
Well, you got problems on the news production end, and you have problems on the news consumer
That's
end.
your background.
Again,
you know that.
Well,
to be a fact.
Please don't think for a second that I am universally endorsing American media. There have been egregious violations, and the media needs to pay a price for that. And there is such a thing as fake news. But here's what happened. On the consumer side, there are cynical opportunists now because they can identify examples of fake news who have granted themselves the license to proclaim everything fake news.
Who are the cynical opportunists? Man. What kind of person would a cynical opportunist be?
A cynical opportunist is somebody who feels free to declare anything they simply don't like to be fake news. Mm-hmm. And if you ask them what their foundation for that is, they can identify an example of fake news. That's fine. They're accurate. I'll support them. But they think that then gives them the right to declare anything they simply don't like fake news. I'll
Right.
use the
No, that's
example
true.
of the New York Times. New York Times has gotten busted. On the other hand, the New York Times is the source of some of the greatest journalism in not only American but world history. So if you want to pick out something that you think is unfair or inaccurate or poorly sourced in the New York Times, that's fine and I'll support you. But if you think that then gives you the right to reject anything that is published in the New York Times, you're just not playing fair, and we are going to bust you on that.
That's just not logical.
Right. Well, and on that note, it's a lot easier to just shut the whole thing down because they said something you don't agree with, even if the next thing they come back with is either slightly adjusted to not be 100% factual or the truth that you don't agree with again, right? It's just easy to shut the entire entity down as fake news if they've said one thing you don't agree with, even if the next thing they say is true, but you just don't like it.
And as you said, it is the end of all conversation,
Yeah.
and it is the beginning of a confrontation because it's just like pulling the pin on a grenade and rolling it out in the room. Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Another thing that we're going to talk about extensively in many episodes here, where in the world did we get the idea that all opinions are created equal and all opinions are worthy of equal respect? That's ridiculous. And we say this because initially your reflex is, gee, that sounds good. It sounds egalitarian. It sounds democratic. It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. First of all, opinions are not the equal of discernible facts that you can corroborate, but even in the realm of opinion. Let me give you an example because this happened recently. So Lori comes to her friend Paul and says, Paul, I got this stomach ache that's killing me. Okay, so Paul says, oh, you know what? It's just acid indigestion. Here's a roll of Tums. Go chew this. You'll be fine. Okay, that's my opinion. But then Lori goes to an actual gastroenterologist. And the gastroenterologist says, no, here's the deal. You got to get your appendix out like right now. Okay,
I'm knocking on wood right now. I don't
well,
like this
I don't want that
example.
either. But my point is, okay, we just offered two opinions. So we have this idea now that because we have an opinionated difference, that they're both of equal respect. Well, no, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And this other guy is a gastroenterologist. So
you know what? You can always get a second opinion from a separate gastroenterologist for that matter, too. And that's just your opinion? Didn't that used to be an out for the opposite argument?
I think
where
it did.
Everyone's got an opinions are like, everybody's got one. It kind of was something that you don't take that seriously. That's just their opinion. And now my opinion is now positioned as a fact because it's my opinion.
I think in the name of inclusiveness, and a lot of this was pretty highly properly motivated. I think people's hearts were in the right place, and they didn't think this through. But the idea that I must respect every opinion equally, well, absolutely not. We'll use a media example.
Okay.
If you put a NASA geophysicist on the air, are you under any obligation to put a flat earther on the air in the name of balance?
That's crazy.
Again, facts
for comic
are
relief.
balance. Yeah, well, I would think so, right?
Not unless you want to totally discredit and piss off your astrophysicist or whatever he was.
Well, and also
Meaning
fly in the face of facts,
of facts and
discernible
media, yes.
facts. So again, we have kind of granted ourselves the license to believe anything we want to believe and not believe anything we don't want to. And here's the reason. With the advent of technology, we all now have the ability to avoid anything that makes us uncomfortable. And it's human nature. If you have the ability to avoid discomfort, you're going to do that. So now all we have, and I'm hardly the first person to say this, is we have affirmation rather than information. And we have people who never expose themselves to any idea, any concept, any fact, or any person that makes them uncomfortable, which is what's so great about us because you piss me off about half the time, and yet here we are.
You're welcome.
I mean that thanks from the absolute bottom of my heart.
I said I don't comment on your Facebook stuff because it pisses me off half the time.
Absolutely.
I can't deal with that person.
Well, you know,
half the time it's you.
You know exactly. You know the number. You know how to get in touch with me for sure. So what happens because we're all serving as our own gatekeeper? It's at once wonderful and at once horrible because being your own gatekeeper is very self-empowering, but ultimately it can be very self-destructive. And I guess the example I would use, lying on your couch eating donuts for a week is going to be really comfortable for a week, and then it's going to kill you. And if all you're doing is exposing yourself to concepts that you already agree with, you are going to atrophy, shrink, and die.
And if you're only exposing yourself to people you agree with and you're fighting the rest of them off fervently from your couch and the safety of your laptop and your underwear, like most people are when they're surfing the web in the middle of the night and saying horrible things to each other that they don't even know and they would never be responsible for face to face. That comes from another human nature thing is insecurity and lack of confidence in a well-researched opinion. If you're going to stand up to somebody and truly bring something to the table, a discussion, information, a different perspective. I want to hear it. I want to know, oh, you think something different from me? Tell me why so that I understand you. I'm not going to change my mind. Like a bumper sticker never changes anybody. Your opinion probably won't change my mind, but it'll expand my perception of why you're so wrong. Just kidding. But why you think differently.
And my point would be, why wouldn't you want to do that?
We can't get there.
It's one thing to force yourself to do it because it's good for me. I got to eat my oatmeal, so I got to listen to other opinions. Why wouldn't you want to do it? Because it is intellectually stimulating.
Because it's scary. And I don't want the world to be different than I've defined it myself. I like my little tiny, puny, little defined four corners, and I don't want to see outside those, thank you very much. And I've got a room full of people who agree with me. So why should I when I can just stand here and point my finger at you and call you ugly names on the internet and be smarter than you?
I get a lot of media input and response from people, as do you. And we're going to be about as blunt as we can be on this show. I will hear people say, I only get my news from Fox News because they're the only outlet telling the truth. And then I have just as many people saying, I only get my news from MSNBC because they're the only outlet telling the truth. I want to pull what's left of my hair out.
Don't do it.
Okay, so here's what happened. Before we can prescribe maybe things we can do about it going forward, we got to discuss how we got here. And this would be my feeling. Everybody talks about the golden age of network television news back in the 50s and 60s, and we're talking about Huntley Brinkley, and we're talking about Uncle Walter and stuff like that.
Uncle Walter.
All these people I greatly admire.
Absolutely.
And it was a golden age in some respects, maybe not as pristine as you think, but we'll talk about that. But here was the difference. Back in the day, Lori, the executives, the brass at all three of those networks, ABC, NBC, and CBS, they would have budget meetings at the beginning of the year, and it was only to figure out how much money they could afford to lose doing news. It was a loss leader, and it was viewed as a public service and a part of their commitment. And what happened? At some point, as they always do, the bean counters took over,
said, aha.
And they figured out a way not only to make news profitable, but to make news wildly profitable and more profitable than anything else they were doing. And the reason is, although doing news is expensive, compared to doing a sitcom, a scripted sitcom, it's really cheap. All right, so this is America, free enterprise. If doing 30 minutes of news is good, then doing 24-hour news of news has to be so much better. And what happened, just to fill the news hole, there became this unholy combination between news and opinion.
Well,
right? Yeah.
News, opinion, and then the very flimsy excuse for breaking news that I keep seeing that banner running across, and I go, oh my God, there's breaking news. That's not breaking.
No,
anything.
When I see breaking news right now, I assume, because they're honest people, that it's news that did happen sometime in the last 10 days. That's breaking news. That's the news standard. So you got this 24-hour news
You gotta
hole.
fill
and
it with something,
and you
so
gotta
why not a
fill
bunch
it
of crap?
yes, exactly. And here's the thing. When people say that the quality of American journalism has declined,
What do you expect?
I don't
We're
know.
spreading ourselves very thin with news.
We are,
Digging pretty deep.
but that statement in and of itself,
Yes.
I'm not sure I totally agree with. I don't know that the quality of American journalism has declined. Here's what's happened, though. There has become this understandable uncertainty about what is news and what is opinion. And here's the thing.
Oh, yeah,
I
nobody
think the
trusts it.
consumer is completely off the hook here. I've heard network executives say, well, it ought to be pretty dang obvious to you what's news and what's opinion. Well, it's not obvious. And it is not incumbent on the news consumer to figure that out. And when they think you're being disingenuous and manipulating them, if they had just been more honest, more truth in advertising, this is a news show, this is an opinion show, we might have avoided this. So if
Oh, you
we're
can't
assigning
deny it.
blame here,
Right.
95% of it to the media themselves.
You can take a road trip, as we all do. I love me a road trip. And you fast forward, you dial through whatever that is, push your little button, trying to find a good AM station, FM station. You stop on a news talk. It takes you 12 seconds if somebody's chit-chatting. 12 seconds to decide, here's your favorite. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
If they're liberal or conservative. Sorry, Paul. But they identify them. Sorry, I know.
I'm
If-
having
I know,
to do
sorry.
open chest
Sorry.
massage on myself right
But
now to keep
if
my
they've
heart beating.
identified them, let me say that. If they've identified themselves, you can, and a legit news story, not talking about a talk show host who wants to just, pontificate. I'm talking about a legit news story.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that they're biased one way or the other. Those aren't facts. That's somebody sneering. That's somebody. Right, go ahead.
I
And
completely agree.
You wanna,
No,
you
not at all.
jump on the liberal conservative thing, or
we're going to get
still
there right
talking?
now
Okay.
because that is a huge part
I
of
know.
this. But the mistrust on the part of the news consumer is completely understandable.
Sure.
It is largely the media
can
that has
smell it.
created the problem. And if there's going to be a cure, it's going to have to be largely up to the media to correct that problem. So if they can't discern between fact and opinion, between a news story, between journalism and opinion-based entertainment, understandably, they're going to be skeptical here.
Sure.
And so what has happened is that everybody has divided into one of two and only two camps, which I think is about the most
Not
ridiculous
everybody.
thing. Pretty much everybody,
You can't say
though.
everybody because then you're guilty of the same example you're trying to make right
Okay,
now.
then the media is guilty then of creating an environment in
Okay.
which that seems to be the case. Because all you
Nice.
have, frankly, one of our jobs here is beating crazies of all stripes back into the shadows. So all we have right now to a large extent with respect to opinion-based programs is the most crazy extreme voice you could possibly locate screaming at you from the right, and the most crazy, completely fringe, extreme voice you could think of screaming at you from the left, and then broadcast executives pat themselves on the back because they're being balanced. No, if all you got is dueling crazies, you're not
There's
being
no
balanced.
balance.
What you're doing effectively is leaving 98% of the sane American population out of the conversation. And this idea that everything can be divided into one of two and only two neat little boxes labeled liberal and conservative, it's if you wanted to screw up every conversation that ever takes place, you could not start with a better premise. For this reason, for whatever it's worth, I'm a language guy. Okay, precise language is good language. And precise language means there is a certainty that what the speaker is saying is what the listener is hearing. Well, in this case, when we get into conservative and liberal, not only is there no guarantee there's an understanding, there's a guarantee that there is no understanding because we got 300 million people in America and no two of them could agree on what conservative and liberal means in the first place, and yet they base all of their discourse on these undefinable terms.
Do you think the ones that are most guilty of using those terms in a degrading way or in order to make their own points or to shut somebody down automatically, do you think they're actually, do they believe that you truly are just a liberal? Or do they hear you say something liberal-ish and just want to shut you down? Do you think it's a lack of information and education and exposure on the person who's judging?
Oh, I think
Or
it has
do you think
absolutely
it's just
become
a
a
convenience?
conversation.
Do you think it's just a convenience?
Conversation stopper for sure.
On
I think it's a
purpose.
convenience. I think it is the intellectual equivalent of I mean, that's about as deep as this goes. And if you look at this, the definitions, and they've never been really specific, but if you track American history, the definitions of liberal and conservative have done 180s on at least 3 different occasions in American history. And there are a lot of things that some people will interpret as liberal, and I'm just using this as an example, that actually would be classically conservative concepts and vice versa. Well, if we can't even define the terms, how can we base our every conversation on those terms?
We need to take those terms and make them go away before we can get anywhere, and that's not going to happen.
You reminds me of you're a good Texas girl, right? And I grew up in Texas. You remember this conversation in the 3rd grade. You're out there on the playground, and here's the question you get: are you a Longhorn or an Aggie? And I'd have to sit there and go, no, actually, I'm a Rice Owl fan. I'm the only one on planet Earth.
Pretty much.
But the suggestion
have to pick one,
that you
Paul.
had to be one of the two because there weren't any other than just two.
Did you
That
say?
is the exact example of why we're not getting anywhere.
Right. And on that example, do you say I'm a Rice Owl, or do you feel like do you answer based on who's asking? Because if you're in you're at a family dinner, Thanksgiving dinner,
Right.
and you're surrounded by liberals, and you're a conservative, this is a social pressure thing, right? So sometimes even
I know what I do.
this is
I
where
ask, where's the peach cobbler and the ice cream? That's what I do.
I'm out. Well, and it's a level of maturity too, and I think we've sort of opted out of emotional and conversational maturity because it is a cop out. We don't want to learn how to disagree in a respectful way. We don't want to learn how to get to the point where we can accept that someone thinks differently from us and is still allowed to exist on this planet. And I think collectively people are kind of waiting to run home to daddy for that. I'm pissed off. I don't agree with you. You want to take my blank away, my guns, my abortion, whatever it is. And you just wait till daddy gets home. It's like that level of maturity is like, what are you going to do with this opinion? We're going to vote so-and-so in, or we're going to vote so-and-so out. And everybody's just so pissed off, but they don't have a plan. When we're the voters, we're America, and we should be able to make a decision together that's good for everyone based on the individual needs. It's like a bad relationship. This is my favorite example of what's happened. It's like a marriage that's gone wrong and has been wrong for a very long time. 2 people sitting in again, I'm dividing it into 2, which we say we're not supposed to do, but like the conflict that's happening in this country right now. You can go on any social media page and see it. It's like a bad marriage. Sitting in a marriage counseling office, and all they want to do is sit there with their arms folded and point at each other. And I hate him. Well, I hate her. Well, she's a blank, and he's a blank. Well, we're never getting anywhere. He stole my this. She did. We're not getting anywhere as long as we hate each other.
The other thing that I think is so sad and so depressing, and I see this every day in social media in particular, somehow we've gotten this idea that if there's a person who disagrees with you about a certain given specific subject, they must disagree with you about everything, that you now have the right to infer everything they think about every possible issue. It's entirely possible you and this person could be total allies on 99 other issues, but the first time they disagree with you about anything, depending on how you define yourself, well, he's just a liberal or she's just a conservative. It's just absolutely pointless.
Makes no sense whatsoever.
I have seen more friends lost on social media, and I'm in being a perfect example. I won't name any names. Been in the media for many, many years, since '92. Someone I've known for pretty much that long has the exact opposite points of view, and it falls into these categories, these finger pointing and name calling kind of categories, and those nicknames that they have for people, these horrible, degrading nicknames that they call groups of people. I want to respect her, and I do have tremendous amounts of respect for this individual. Professionally, personally, I think she's an awesome human being. But the more I read on her social media page, the less respect I want. I have to force myself to say, no, this person is really, truly a genuine, awesome human being. And she's got plenty of talents, and she's got degrees, and she's this and she's that. But she's a complete jerkface now, and she's a professional. She shouldn't be talking like that. So I'm saying I
And we're
try
all
and be
guilty.
rational about it. Again, it's hard.
And the
You look at
idea
this, you
that
go, I
there
don't
is
even
a
want to know
certain
this person
degree
anymore.
of anonymity, for
Unfollow.
sure. Anonymity has turned cowards into very bold people from time to time. By the way, my house isn't totally clean. I can get agitated about this. Absolutely.
Week.
And there are times when I go, okay. I mean, I really need to be a little bit more disciplined about this, for sure. But it's because we have created this false dichotomy of us versus them.
Exactly.
And it is, so far, no shots have been fired, but in a sense, it truly is an intellectual civil war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like coming at social media these days, and I'm not just slamming it all collectively, but that's kind of where all this starts, or that's where it's all finished. We see something on the news and we get on our Facebook page. Blah, blah, blah. It's very much like you go to a party and there's a whole bunch of different kinds of people there. That's how social media started. Oh, it's really cool, so-and-so. Wow, so-and-so. And now it's shaken down to like every party is over. There are paper cups everywhere, trash. People will sleep on the couch, and the last 7 or 8 people of the party are now standing around just saying you never thought you'd hear anybody say. They're criticizing each other, and guess who they thought have already left? And you walk back in the room and go, wow, this conversation went south. That's what's happening in social media. The last few people of the party who should have gone home a long time ago had way much to drink. You're drunk. It's time to go home.
Sure does make Thanksgiving fun, though.
I'd rather sit there at a Thanksgiving table with people I disagree with and can look in their eyes and have a discussion about conflict.
You know what, Lori? Rational discussions aside and standards of fairness and listening to each other aside, just from the standpoint of intellectual stimulation and entertainment, when was the last time you were listening to any radio news talk show and anybody said anything that surprised you in the slightest or that you didn't see come? You knew everything they were going to say before they say it because they have divided themselves into 2 camps. Just as an information consumer, I kind of like being surprised every now and then. And I think there are a lot of people out there who feel the way we do, and we're trying to give them an outlet.
Yes. I have nothing but yes on that.
So we want you to contact us. And by the way, as we grow, this is the initial podcast of Radically Rational, but it also is the launching of our Radically Rational empire. So as the empire grows, we will give you many other ways to contact us. But for right now, the best way is Paul Alexander at radicallyrational.com.
Email Paul.
And Laura, you'll be screening all this information.
Will I? Can I look at all the pictures too?
Yeah. It's just grandkids at this point, okay? So you were talking about this deal about, did I tell people I'm a Rice Owl fan?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'd go up to those Longhorn fans and say, I'm a Rice Owl fan, and I'm only in my 60s, and here's the deal. In my lifetime, I've seen us beat you twice. So don't talk to me.
2 whole times?
Exactly. One time when I was 11 years old, and then however old I was in 1994.
Are we talking sports? Just warn me ahead before you start going into sports.
Oh, would you stop that? I tried calling you last Sunday during the Super Bowl.
What color are the outfits?
And you wouldn't talk to me because you were into the game and you were all upset that the 49ers didn't call timeout right before halftime. So don't give me that stuff.
I'm sorry, what?
Hey, should we inject
Further
into the
from the
conversation right now the fact that, and we mean this, and we'll prove it to you, we are politically nonpartisan.
Oh, yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean we don't have strong opinions.
Mostly because we don't want to be affiliated with either party because they will end up tarnishing our reputation.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. When we say we're politically nonpartisan, Doesn't mean we're apolitical. Doesn't mean we don't have opinions. Doesn't mean we have strong opinions. But those opinions are not tied to any kind of allegiance
Not at all.
to a movement or an orthodoxy or a philosophy or particularly a major American party right now, because they are both failing us miserably.
And for the record, our opinions aren't even partisan. Your opinion is subject to change if enough information gets processed and you expand your perspective of things. And likewise.
Can I ask you this question? Isn't that a cool moment?
Yes.
I mean, really and truly, if you're an open-minded person,
It's glorious.
if there's an occasion in which you go, I truly must reconsider this issue because I've got new information and I am seeing this from an entirely different point of view, I actually find that kind of refreshing and restorative. I live for moments like that.
Absolutely. That's where learning happens. It's just like a muscle. When you get to that point where you get frustrated and your brain wants to shut down and call something easy and close the door, that's where learning happens. When the burnout happens, that's when growth occurs. You got to do that with ideas. You got to do it with your brain. You got to do it with your body. You got to push through that level of being uncomfortable with how that feels.
Let's talk about this issue of point of view, POV, as it relates to truth. There are discernible facts. There is a canon of facts that are unchallengeable, okay? We don't know everything about gravity, but gravity exists, okay? We know the acceleration due to gravity. Well, but we're talking about gravity here on Earth, and that's measurable and quantifiable.
Yes.
But this is really interesting. When we talk about point of view as it relates to truth and facts, there's a reason why attorneys and law enforcement officials think eyewitness accounts are among the least reliable information they get. And there actually is a very natural reason for that. Sometimes when we talk about point of view, Lori, it's not philosophical point of view or I'm coming at this with a bias. It really literally has to do with physical, geographic point of view. For example, we're in a studio here with a bunch of microphones, and there is a microphone off to my right and your left, and we're looking at the same microphone.
If we drew a picture of it, they'd look totally different.
They look totally different, and we would ascribe different characteristics to that microphone because we were just physically visiting it from a point of view. Okay, if you want to know what triggered the whole Kennedy assassination conspiracy theory thing, it really would be that more than anything else, the physical point of view of observers.
Don't forget the other landmark case regarding legal and different points of view, my cousin Vinny.
Who could forget that, right?
Right? And that's a very good point. We are all the centers of our own universes, and not in a selfish kind of immature way. But we only see what we can see out of our own eyes from our own perspectives based on our own histories and our own upbringings and our own geographic location, as you said.
So we're going to have guests on this show, and we're going to make a commitment to you. We're going to make every effort to make sure that this list of guests is very wide-ranging and very eclectic. It's going to represent every political point of view. We're trying to make this as apolitical as we can, but again, it's incumbent on us to prove to you that we are not politically partisan.
No.
We're not. But
we're not going to have somebody on just because they're a certain
we're
political
not.
party or because they whatever. Right.
But here's the part of the deal that we're hoping our listeners will pick up on.
Yeah.
Just because somebody is on this show and they disagree with you or you disagree with them about a certain issue, that does not give anybody the right to paint them with a broad brush and a broad label and make assumptions about their positions on every single issue. So here's the thing. We're going to ask the people, you can fight hard. We can go at it hammer and tongs, but we ask that you fight fair. And you know those old great Greek dudes and dudettes? You know, some of them were pretty darn smart. And they came up with this list of logical fallacies, which essentially is thou shalt nots when it comes to fair, logical arguing. So we're going to not only ask, we're going to insist that you adhere to those principles. And by the way, when you violate them, Lori and I are not going to in any way chide you or criticize you. We're going to leave that to a 9-year-old girl.
That's radically rational.
They say it best.
All right, so you probably figured this out, but Lori and I have no sacred cows. We eat cows. At least I do.
I eat cows.
Yeah.
On
You
occasion.
can get pretty damn demanding when it comes to outdoor barbecues and stuff like
Cows
that.
are cute, but I do eat them.
Well, okay. All right.
So see, I'm on both sides of that one too.
but,
I feel sorry for the cows, but they're tasty.
but on the other hand, absolutely.
Medium well.
So this is, as we said, our first foray into this. This is something we've been talking about for a long time. We do want you to know this. We're not real schmaltzy, and
No.
we think that really everything, if it's fair, is fair game for humor. And really what we're trying to do here more than anything else is, have a stimulating conversation, but also something that entertains you, hopefully makes you laugh, and makes you feel like you've got access to the conversation. So as time goes on, we'll tell you how to get in touch with us via telephone, via text, via smoke signal or carrier pigeon or whatever it is. But for right now, and we would love to hear from you, just send us an email at paulalexander@radicallyrational.com. Okay, here's both the opportunity and the sad part about this. Did you ever think you'd get to the point where being merely rational would now be considered radical?
No.
It really is alarming, which is why we're trying to, because we're perceiving that there are a lot of you out there who feel this way. And we want to give you an opportunity to express that. We also know that we just pissed off 10% of people on the fringe on the right and 10% of the people of the fringe on the left. And know this, you are welcome to participate in the conversation as well.
Call.
Number one, because you're really funny. And because you do a better job of illustrating our point than we ever could.
Please call. But for the people sort of in the middle, the balance that doesn't exist but really does, you got that list of Greek rules. We'll walk you through it. We're not going to expect you to know these rules and abide by them right off the bat. If you come up and you've got an opinion and we run it through the filters, we'll guide you through it. We're not here to poke fun at you.
No,
unless you're funny.
Unless, of course, you're funny. But you know what? You were talking earlier about how can people educate themselves to be more informed consumers of information. How about we give everybody a homework assignment, and then we'll talk about this next time on Radically Rational.
Homework.
Go back, and it's all you got to do is just get online, take you 10 seconds. Go back and look at the formal list of logical fallacies.
That's a thing?
It's absolutely.
I thought you made that up.
I'm not quite as old as some of those old Greeks.
I thought you rebranded it. I'll just say that. Okay, so what do we search for?
Logical fallacies.
Logical fallacies.
And it shows you
It's
arguments.
Scary, Paul.
It is
Because
because
you go, I do that.
all the time. As a matter of fact, I hate to say this, but for a lot of people, if you removed logical fallacies from their arsenal of arguments, they really would not have anything left other than, once again, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, what am I?
Well, just so that we don't scare people away from that, besides gravity, give me a couple more examples. A fact is a fact is a fact. Something that's not subject to my opinion or perspective.
There are scientific facts with respect to our physical world, with respect to solids and liquids and gases, etc.
But those don't play into my political perspective, Paul.
They truly don't. But a little bit of objective education and telling you and finding out really what the genius of this country is. And by the way, we talk about the fact we don't get schmaltzy. Well, I do about one thing. Okay, let's get this straight. I get teary-eyed about America.
Patriotism.
Okay, I believe in America, but I believe in the genius of America and the uniqueness of America and the fact that there were principles introduced to our institutions that are truly enlightened. And now I hear Americanism being defined in terms of things that are 180 degrees out of phase. So again, we are not politically partisan, But we are going to call out liars when we see them, where we see them, from whatever direction they're coming from. And get this straight. We're into plain talk. If there's somebody who serially and regularly and with malice aforethought and with intent
Wow. You know this person, don't you?
violates the truth. Okay, you know what you call somebody like that?
A liar?
You call somebody like that a liar. And we're not going to be afraid to do that regardless of what vector or direction that liar is coming from.
I don't want to just call them a liar, though, because then they go away and we can't
Oh, I'll take that.
out.
Oh, I'll take that bet.
I want to draw it out. I want to find out how they got there.
I do, but again, we've granted ourselves the license
True,
to think anything we simply prefer must be a fact.
And you can't give just anybody a mic. Facebook proves that.
Well, yeah, and by the way, and anybody who disagrees with me, they're not just somebody with whom I have a difference of opinion. They're my enemy. I mean,
Isn't that the same thing already?
Just absolutely, it's
I
just
know.
so
It's
incredibly
unfortunate.
depressing. We define enemy as anyone who disagrees with us about anything.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to fix this. We don't want to be some of these people that just whine about things without proposing some
I
solutions.
want them to call.
So as time goes on, we are going to have a discussion about things we can do to improve this situation, because I truly believe that this is the biggest problem facing our country right now, and that if we can work this out, yes, our best days are still ahead of us.
You and I don't have the solution. It's going to take other people calling in who agree with the need for a reset. And together we can come up with ways that as individuals we can go out into our own friend groups, live and online, and introduce these strange, scary topics called ration and reason, right?
First thing you got to acknowledge is that there is a problem, and it is, in fact, broke.
That's the first step in
our communication, our
addressing the
conversation is
issue.
broken right now. So if
Super
we're going to
broke.
fix it, first of all, we're going to have to acknowledge the problem, and then we're all going to have to commit as individuals to finding ways to make that situation better, because this is not an exaggeration, I don't think. Our very survival depends on that.
Yeah, I agree. The survival of our democracy, survival of family. Because in a family, you've got the family divided now because they don't know how else to communicate aside from opposing each other. That's not good.
Well, it looks like we got through the first one. How are you feeling?
I feel good.
Okay, well, about 300,000 to go, because oh yeah, you'll understand this.
300,000?
You're committed
How
to this
often are we
now.
doing this?
But this is just the first
Puts me-
building block in the radically rational empire. I don't
Empire.
know, Lori.
Empire.
How often you want to do it?
Every day. Let's do this every day.
That would be the goal. So again, we thank you for being part of this experiment. We do want to let you know that we really do want to serve you.
Yeah.
And we really do want to make this situation better. So again, in the short run, you can email us
We need you.
at paulalexander@radicallyrational.com, and we do, in fact, need you.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some
Otherwise,
pretty...
it's just going to be me and you rambling on, and nobody wants that.
No, nobody wants that. But we got some interesting guests lined up, and they're all people who have a unique perspective on this whole issue of communication, how we got where we are, and some things we can do to fix it.
And I would suffice to say, someone who's listening probably says, I've kind of worked through that, and I've got an idea of how to bridge the gap.
We would love to hear your
Love it.
experiences. So, Lori, just know this. There's nobody on earth that I respect more, and there's nobody on earth that I would rather be working with in what I consider kind of a bold experiment here, and something that I'm genuinely fired up about, and I know that you are too.
Oh, absolutely. I am honored to be here.
So as they say in broadcast terms, we now have one in the can. As time goes on, we'll be giving you a video version of this. We'll show you how you can get to our full-service website, which does include a margarita machine, for sure. And pardon me while I take a sip of this water. You're assuming that this is water.
I don't know. I saw a liquor cabinet out there with half-empty bottles.
I think people got a really good idea around here is what I think. So again, thank you.
Yes.
To
thank
be
you.
continued. This is still getting shaped, but we're committed to the idea of being radically rational. And right now, what could be a more radical idea than that?
Than the truth. And we need people to email. We need them in order to have a full, better idea of what shape this is going to take.
So let's go do it. So until next time, and next time is coming very, very soon,
Yes.
I'm Paul Alexander along with Lori Pearson. And remember, we're not crazy.
You are.